So what happens when a team that can't lose meets a team that just can't seem to win? Well, tonight, we're going to break down a game that had absolutely everything. We're talking a superstar's big return, a shocking comeback from an underdog, and a fourth-quarter collapse that was saved by one person's incredible will to win. Let's dive right in. 10. Just think about that number for a second. Imagine the feeling in that locker room, the pressure, the doubt. 10 straight losses. That is the crushing weight that Dallas Mavericks were carrying into this game. You know, a streak like that, it doesn't just test your talent, it tests your spirit. And this matchup, it was a classic story of two teams heading in completely opposite directions. You had one soaring towards the playoffs, and the other just spiraling deeper and deeper into a crisis.
I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's pretty wild. On one side, you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, a legit contender, sitting pretty with a 35-22 record. And on the other side, Dallas, at 19-36, smack in the middle of a full-blown crisis, dragging that awful 10-game slide with them. The momentum could not have been more different coming into this one.
And you gotta understand, this losing streak wasn't just about playing badly. Dallas was absolutely battered by injuries. They were already missing Kyrie Irving and Dereck Lively for the rest of the season. And for this game, they were also without their hotshot rookie, Cooper Flagg, and a key guard in Max Christie. So they weren't just fighting the Timberwolves, they were basically fighting with one hand tied behind their back.
Meanwhile, for Minnesota, the hero was coming home. Fresh off winning the All-Star Game MVP award, Anthony Edwards was back on his home court. And you better believe the expectations for him were through the roof.
And for a while, the game went exactly how everyone thought it would. It really looked like we were heading for an early night, a total knockout.
The Timberwolves just exploded out of the gate. They dropped 40 points in the first quarter alone. It was just an offensive onslaught that made it look like the game was over before it really even got started. And this right here, this was the peak. Their lead swelled all the way up to 17 points. The game felt done. You know, it seemed like all Minnesota had to do was just cruise to the finish line. But then, things got interesting. The Mavericks, playing like a team with absolutely nothing to lose, started to chip away. And that huge, comfortable Minnesota lead, well, all of a sudden it started to look really, really fragile. And it wasn't just a little run, no. Dallas ripped off a massive 12-2 scoring burst. And get this, Minnesota had been leading comfortably for over 36 straight minutes of this game, and then in just a few possessions, all of that was just vanishing into thin air. And then, the moment that sent a wave of panic through the whole arena. Less than 7 minutes left to play. Tyus Jones gets in the lane, puts up a little floater, and it drops. Just like that, the game is tied. That entire 17-point lead, gone. And all the momentum had swung to Dallas. You know, these are the moments that separate the good players from the superstars. Your team is reeling, the game is on the line, the home crowd is dead silent. So how's the All-Star MVP gonna respond? He answered. Immediately, no hesitation. On the very next possession, with all that pressure just bearing down on him, Edwards pulls up and hits a cold-blooded step-back three. It was the shot that stopped the bleeding and just let the entire building breathe again. And believe me, that was just the start of his takeover. When that final buzzer sounded, Ant had put up an incredible 40 points for the game. But this number, this is the one that really tells the story. Of his 40 points, 14 of them came in that do-or-die fourth quarter, right after the game got tied, right when his team needed him the absolute most. That, my friends, is what a clutch performance looks like.
So after Edwards' heroics, the Mavericks' comeback hopes were pretty much broken. The Timberwolves managed to hang on for a win that was way tougher than it should have been, and in doing so, they just extended the misery for Dallas.
And when you look at the final score here, you can kind of see the whole story in the numbers. That huge 40-point first quarter gave Minnesota the cushion they desperately needed. Even though Dallas actually outscored them in the second and third, Minnesota's strong finish, led by Ant, was just enough to seal the 122-111 win. And hey, while Anthony Edwards was clearly the hero of the night, you can't overlook the massive performance from Rudy Gobert. 22 points and a monster 17 rebounds. He was an absolute force down low all game long, a perfect co-star for this win. But for Dallas, man, the pain just goes on. This timeline really puts it into perspective. Their last win was way back on January 22nd. This loss marks nearly a full month of nothing but L's. Just brutal.
And to really understand how bad this is, you have to look at the history. This isn't just a slump. This is the Mavericks' longest losing streak in 28 years. We're talking about a generational low point for the franchise, which really puts the depth of this crisis in Dallas into perspective.
So that brings us to the big forward-looking question, right? We just saw Anthony Edwards basically refuse to let his team lose. We saw him single-handedly pull them back from the brink of a total collapse. And it really makes you wonder, is that clutch gene, that sheer force of will he showed, is that the final ingredient that can turn the Timberwolves from a good team into a true honest-to-goodness championship contender?